Hello everyone, MarkOfAllTrades here, and we're finally here with my first set of reviews, as promised. And sorry it took a little bit to get here, it's just I've had exams, and I've also been cleaning my room a little bit, so I've had more than I thought I'd have to do during this time. But we're finally here, and I'm going to be reviewing Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and Doom Eternal, as promised. And just so you know, obviously, there's going to be spoilers here, and if you want to see only one game reviewed, there will be timestamps in the description, although that will mainly only matter for Doom Eternal. The point is, you'll be able to watch whatever review you want, or if you want to stick around for both, I will greatly appreciate it, and will love you forever. Thank you, and enjoy. So, Dragon Ball is a series that needs no introduction. I honestly got into Dragon Ball because of Dragon Ball Xenoverse. I got it around the time of my 16th birthday, shortly after it came out. I know, I didn't grow up with it on Toonami. I was more of a Naruto kid myself. Yeah, crucify me. Final flash me into oblivion. The point being is, I've been a fan since. I've seen Kai, I've seen most of Dragon Ball, and I've seen all of Super. So, yeah, I have grown to love the series. So, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an open-world RPG that sets out to, stop me if you've heard this one before, retell the story of Dragon Ball Z, Saiyan Saga through Buu Saga. Yep, totally original. Never been done before. I was initially kind of worried for this game, because, first of all, because it was called Kakarot, and the first trailer they showed was Goku, I thought it was just Goku's story, so you could only play as him. And secondly, it wasn't a fighting game, which was what Dragon Ball does best, combat. But I went in with an open mind, especially considering that the studio that worked on this game worked on the Naruto Storm games, which are my favorite anime games, and possibly even my favorite fighting games of all time. So, yeah, seeing that CyberConnect 2 was working on this gave me some hope. But let's not beat around the bush here. This game is bad, and I'm gonna explain why. I guess there are some positives to note, like, the game looks great. CC2 are no stranger to making anime games look great. And like Naruto Storm, it's a faithful recreation. Many of the scenes look like the anime, just, 3D and cel-shaded. Which, again, is what they were going for, so I'm glad that they could achieve it. On top of that, a few of the fights were really good, like the final fight with Frieza, or Gohan vs. Cell, Goku vs. Fat Buu, Vegito vs. Super Buu, and Goku vs. Kid Buu were all great fights. And they were the only truly great fights in the game. And that's an issue because the game is like 40 hours long. So let's get into the negatives of the game. The majority of it. Starting with the combat. I think the biggest issue with this game's combat is that it's shallow. CC2 are no stranger to combat that's seemingly shallow. Like this game, the Storm series only has one melee attack button. But the fact of the matter is, it's fine because you have multiple combos depending on the direction you put with the left stick. Like, you have a side combo, you have a back combo, you have a forward combo, and a neutral combo. With this, you just have one combo. And yeah, there's some special moves you can use, a la Xenoverse, and you have limit breaks for defensive moves, but that's nothing. That adds way less than it would seem. And it's still way less than pretty much any other Dragon Ball game. And I get it, this wasn't trying to be some fighting game. It was trying to be an RPG as well as an action game. But if you're gonna put me through 40 hours of gameplay, at least make the bulk of that gameplay fun and not freaking repetitive. Combat has a really repetitive flow as a result of the shallow controls. You boost up to an enemy, you spam circle, you go back when they stop staggering, rinse and repeat. You can vary it up yourself with certain melee specials and projectiles, but you don't need to do that, and when you do, it barely makes any difference and gets repetitive in and of itself. I just don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again for 40 hours. And unfortunately, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is repetitive on average. But that's on average. You don't even want to know how it is at its worst. Except I'm gonna tell you anyway, because, this is a review. There are some truly awful sections of this game. Pretty much any match where the enemy is able to absorb health, like Piccolo versus First Form Cell, or Goku versus Yakon. But the absolute worst point in the game was Piccolo versus Dr. freaking Gero. My god, I hated this fight. Not only were Gero's attack patterns some of the most repetitive in the game, but he also has this freaking absorption attack that is very hard to dodge, and then when he gets it, he absorbs almost one of your health bars. And there's no way to get it back besides spamming healing items. So if you get hit with this enough and don't spam healing items, you have to start all over and listen to him say the same thing over and over again as he blasts you with his spammy projectile.
I will eliminate you. I will eliminate you. I will eliminate you.
Shut up! And a lot of the fights that are infuriating also last an eternity. Like Goku versus Yakon, where Yakon's health bar is like a mile long. Not to mention Gohan versus Majin Buu, a fight that in the anime was primarily done by the Supreme Kai, is done by Gohan, who is extremely underleveled at the time. And I get it, the point is to show that Majin Buu is powerful, but couldn't it have been the Supreme Kai, or couldn't it have been one of those fights that happens in games sometimes, where you're supposed to lose? I mean, they could have had so many ways around this, but no. It was a boring, tedious, overlong fight that I just wanted to end halfway through. I didn't even think I was supposed to win, and then I realized, oh crap. Like, you're supposed to win this. I realized like halfway through when the dialogue kept going. It was kind of depressing because I was low on health, and then I had to spam healing items, which I'm about to get into. One thing I've been mentioning throughout this review is healing items, which the game not only doesn't limit you in battle with, but also they give you by the boatload. In the beginning of the game, and honestly throughout, you can sell valuable items that aren't incredibly hard to come by, and then sell them at a high price and buy healing items which aren't that expensive. And then, starting at about the second half of the game, you're allowed senzu beans, and you're allowed to equip as many as you want, and they come in by the boatload. Korin just can't stop making them. So, any remotely difficult fights you can get out of with Vita drinks and senzu beans. It's honestly, like, it would make up for the combat if it motivates me not to actually try in the fights. Because the combat is repetitive, even without the healing items. The healing items just make it so that I don't rip my hair out. And no, that's not a good thing. It shouldn't have to be that way. the combat flow should be diverse enough to where I'm more motivated to actually learn it instead of just being like, oh well, and spamming healing items. In fact, I think ideally they should only allow about, 4 or 5 healing items per battle. And also, I think that the combat should have been made deeper. The combat should have been made more fluent and more fun so that I would actually be motivated to challenge myself. But nope, the challenging fights are mostly cheap. Oh, and I wish healing items were the only thing that cheapened the combat. But no, playing as Vegeta is fun, but in all the wrong ways after you get Big Bang Attack. Big Bang Attack goes really far, has a really big radius, and not to mention does an extreme amount of damage. So, basically, you have a game-breaking win button with Vegeta, and Ki isn't exactly hard to charge. You start charging and it goes up in like 2 seconds. Unlike Xenoverse, where you have to actually kind of earn it. So, yeah, you can just spam Big Bang Attack. Here's me doing it on Kid Buu, like the final fight you do as Vegeta. Like, look at this. He's barely even fighting back. Unfortunately, the combat isn't the game's only problem. I mean, it's the main problem, but it's not the only problem. So, another issue I have is the fetch quests. It's just so many of the main missions, you'll be asked to get ingredients or something of that nature and bring them to a character. And it's just so repetitive. You get ingredients, you fight a few enemies, and that's it. And they're hard to find, you have to use a scouter, and it doesn't always work. And not to mention, that's a lot of the side quests too. Get an item, fight some robots, and that's it. I can't believe this is something that they have in the main story, yet they skip key fights like Goten vs. Trunks and Gohan vs. Videl. I can't even believe it. They have these freaking fetch quests instead that basically take up like the first hour of the Cell Saga, which by the way is the worst saga to play in this game. They're boring, they're repetitive, and they add nothing to the game. So, I'd say overall this game felt rushed. And the last thing I'm going to mention to prove this isn't the glitches, isn't the sloppiness of everything, but it's the soundtrack. There are some good themes here that really capture the essence of Dragon Ball. In fact, in the final boss fight, they actually do Chala Head Chala, which is very fitting. It's very good fan service, but so many of the tracks are just out of place. For the best example of this, I'm gonna show the theme that plays when you're Gohan and you're about to fight Super Buu. One of the most important fights in the series, one of the highest tension moments where the world is about to end. Let's see what they play when you're going towards him.
Goten, Trunks, Piccolo, hang in there. I hope I can make it.
Freaking circus music. I mean, I know Gohan was clowning on Super Buu at first, but this is ridiculous. You have this heavy apocalyptic moment in the game, and you play circus music. That is not the only tonal inconsistency in the game. And I get it. Gohan was a little bit more cocky in the Japanese version. I grew up with the English version. But even then, this is a very tension-filled moment. I don't think in any case, they should be playing circus music. And yes, that's what it sounds like to me, with the upbeat, blaring trumpets. I guess the last thing I'll say before my final thoughts on the game is that the whole thing just felt like a rush job. I said it before and I'm gonna say it again. It just felt like they put this thing out the door so that they could have it right at the beginning of 2020 when not that much was coming out, so it would sell better. It just felt like a rush job. It felt like they just kept reusing music. They kept reusing enemies. All you fight are robots and Cybermen, pretty much, besides major fights, which they didn't even include all of. And it just feels like they lacked a lot of effort, even though they sort of tried to be faithful to the anime and make it this fan-servicey, nostalgic experience. But they failed miserably because their attention to detail was god-awful, and you don't really feel any punch with the combat, as mentioned earlier. So, in conclusion, this game was extremely disappointing. Not only because CC2 is capable of so much more, given the Naruto Storm games are, in my opinion, the best anime fighters around, and also the Dragon Ball franchise in general has had good to great games for the past few years, so I wasn't expecting this one to be bad. I had my doubts, but all in all, it was just disappointing. It was bad. I almost quit a couple of times, especially in the Cell Saga, but I didn't want to do that on my first review. I felt like it would have made me less credible. I feel like you guys wouldn't have had as good of an idea as to why I didn't like the game, and I feel like it wouldn't have been fair to the game overall. With all of that said, my final rating for this thing is a light to decent 4. I considered rating it lower, but the Boo Saga was better than the rest of the game, so yeah. On to the next one. Doom is a series that needs no introduction, and it's a series that I've been loving more and more this year. Honestly, I started the series with Doom 2016 because I bought it shortly after it came out, and I really enjoyed it. It is one of my favorite games of last decade. I've legit bought it 4 times. Once on PS4 was my initial version, once from my brother on Xbox One, once on Switch, and at this point, once on PC. So, yeah, it's a game that means a lot to me. Funny story, though. I was actually a bit worried about this one. With the delays and the Bethesda not having the best output as of recent thing going on. I was worried this game wasn't going to be that great. And I'm so happy I was proven wrong. Dead wrong. So, the biggest improvement I'd have to say is the gameplay. Obviously, it's a very gameplay-centric series, and it was bound to improve upon Doom 2016. Even though I had no idea where they could go, they went many places. For example, there are enemy weaknesses now. Like the Mancubus can mainly be defeated if you hit him with a Blood Punch first, which is a new powerful punch that Doom Guy has. And essentially, it'll knock off his armor. You can still defeat him without it, but it's far more beneficial to break the armor first. Also, shooting the tail of a Pinky is way easier than shooting it in the face. It defeats it way quicker. Lastly, the Arachnotrons can mainly be defeated if you shoot their stingers. Again, that's not required, but it just makes your life a lot easier. And I love it. You still have the freedom, but you have ways to make things easier and add a sense of strategy into your combat style. One more little bit about strategic weapon use is that the chainsaw is so much more useful in this one than in 2016. because not only do your weapons have less ammo than last time, glory kills don't cause enemies to drop ammo, so you need to use the chainsaw far more often. And it's kind of like a game as to what pawns you're gonna glory kill and which ones you're gonna chainsaw. And a fun game at that. Not only was strategic combat improved, but traversal was improved as well. You have this new dash mechanic that allows you to dash, whether that be in combat or in platforming. And in platforming, it's extremely fun because a lot of the time it's a game as to when you're going to dash. Whether you dash, wait a bit, and then dash again, or just dash twice and blow your entire load, or whether you have to wait to dash after, vaulting on a pole or whatever. It's very, very fun as a person who loves platforming. Speaking of which, there's also wall climbing. If you press the right stick near a climbable wall, you'll climb it. If, you hold up. And basically, there are a ton of these walls lying around, and it's another way in which the world is easier and more versatile to traverse. The last thing I can say about the platforming is that it just felt more fluid. It felt a little bit more like it worked, like you would rarely ever not climb a ledge if you attempted, which is something that would happen to me sometimes in 2016, which it wasn't that often, but it happened enough for me to notice. But there just wasn't as much BS in the game with the platforming, and I appreciate it. Combat was improved in general, because you have better weapons, like the super shotgun works way better in this game, and it has a freaking meat hook, where you can grapple onto enemies. Also, you have upgrades that benefit this, like there's a slow motion upgrade that is slow motion when you're aiming in the air. And it's incredible because if you use it in tandem with the meat hook, it's like the coolest stuff in the world. It's like Mission Impossible. Not to mention, you have a crucible, which is this giant laser sword that destroys essentially everything in one hit. Plus, you don't have that weak pistol anymore. Because, again, with how much ammo is emphasized, I almost never found myself running out. So, I wouldn't need something like the pistol. Honestly, with the fluent movement and the overall smoother gameplay, it feels like you're having a dance with the demons. Almost like Devil May Cry as a first-person shooter. And as you continue to watch this channel, you'll realize I love Devil May Cry. Wanna know what else is amazing? The music. Obviously, you have Mick fucking Gordon on deck, and of course, he's amazing. I wish I could play his music here without getting demonetized, because I'd really love to. You should honestly just play the game for yourself, which I'll continue to say throughout the video, most likely. But, Mick Gordon is an incredible composer, and even if the tunes here don't have quite as much as a punch as Doom 2016, they're still amazing and fitting, just like they were then. And I can't commend him enough. I want to meet him one day at a con or something. He is incredible. I wouldn't expect any less, but the game looks incredible. It's almost realistic at this point. Like, I bet the next entry is gonna look live action. I know everyone says that when a game looks good, but I thought Doom 2016 was one of the best looking games when it released. And now Doom Eternal completely outshines it. I just am so impressed with id. So impressed. And the environments are far more varied than last time. Instead of just hell and space, you have a lot more. You do have hell and you do have space, but you also have a lot of Earth environments, and you have medieval looking environments. It's Honestly, just a nice mix. And the weapons look more, for lack of a better term, doomy, I guess? The plasma rifle looks more like itself. The Gauss cannon now has this bow and arrow look to it, and it's nice. I just thought they looked better overall. You know, they look less like they were trying to look like weapons in other games. And the enemy design is stellar. I think, you know, the Marauders, even though I don't like them, and I'll get to that, they look really cool. And the Pain, they're funny to me, and not in a bad way. They just look funny. I love how, like, they're these, like, eye demons with tiny little arms. It's like they're trying to be intimidating. And they are. They're pretty difficult to take out, but I don't know. I just found it funny. And the glory kills. Don't get me started on the glory kills. They look somehow almost as good as last time. No, they look better. They just have a little bit less of a punch to them, but they look even better. Like, my freaking god. I love when you, glory kill an Arachnitron, and it just makes a freaking hiss at you. It's incredible! The sound design in this game is nearly unmatched. Now, unfortunately, not every game can be perfect, and Doom Eternal is not perfect. It has one thing holding it back: Marauders. Yeah, you heard it here first. Marauders are awful and completely ruin the flow of gameplay, because you can only hit them at a very specific moment. And unlike with the other enemies, in which you can hit at any time. And Marauders, you can't go too far away from them, but you can't go too close to them. You have to keep them at mid-range and then hit them with either the shotgun or the Gauss cannon, otherwise you're screwed. And then it sends out this dog at you, and it's a mess. And honestly, I don't know why they put them in. I feel like, you know, they should have replaced it with another difficult enemy. Something new, but something that would challenge the player. It's just, they're not even difficult. They're just tedious to take out. Which is arguably worse. I'd rather have a challenging demon that puts my skills to the test than a tedious one that I could decently easily take out, but it takes an eternity and it's not fun. So yeah, take out the Marauders and the game would be perfect. I'm not even kidding here. So in conclusion, Doom Eternal not only manages to be a huge improvement upon its predecessor, but one of the best shooters of the generation, and one of the best shooters of all time. Such an impressive feat from a game that got delayed. And I honestly did not expect it to be this good. I didn't expect to love it this much in the first half. But it improved upon everything. It was a fun, fast, frantic experience that managed to keep me invested throughout. If it weren't for those dang Marauders, it would be perfect. I'm rating this game a decent to strong 9. It is fantastic, and I urge you to get it if you're a fan of shooters, or games in general, honestly. Go play Doom Eternal. Thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to hit that like button, be sure to subscribe. Honestly, I love doing this so far. I've wanted to do reviews for quite a while now, and I'm glad it's already coming to fruition at this point. So yeah, the next set of reviews I'm going to do is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yes, I'm actually committing to it this time, and Resident Evil 3 Remake, which y'all already know that's not going to be hard to knock out. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in a week or two. And if there are any changes, like usual, I'll put it on the channel's discussion box. Thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Overall, Doom Eternal is an incredible game. Not only did it manage to prove... Overall, Doom Eternal is an incredible game. Not only did it manage to improve on everything that the already amazing Doom 2016 set out, but it managed to add a whole new set of layers of gameplay that made it even more exciting, fun, frantic, and momentum-based than its predecessor. I'm just so impressed that it was able to make this game as good as it was. It was better than it had any right to be. Overall, Doom Eternal is an amazing game. Not only did it manage to improve on everything that 2016 set out to do. So, in conclusion, this game is ultimately extremely disappointing. I was not satisfied with it at all.